Imagine yourself in the middle of nowhere, standing on an endless stretch of road. On the other end of that road is someone you want to be closer to. Imagine your desire to establish a bond with that person surpasses any other. You try to run towards them, but the distance only seems to grow. You quicken and lengthen your stride to no avail. The faster you approach the person, the faster they move away from you. Eventually, your elongated strides become small leaps. You continue to leap further and further, only to find yourself nowhere closer to that person, exhausted, losing patience, and losing hope. With each leap, you either trip and fall, or they move further away. Despite appearances, they're not moving away from you on purpose. They've simply abandoned their value for friendship and love, and therefore cannot recognize your attempts to close the distance. Welcome to the perspective of a reserved and introverted girl facing a peculiar kind of unrequited love. The girl's name is Sakura Adachi. She desires to reach the other end of the endless road, where a seemingly carefree girl stands, holding no value in love. That girl's name is Hougetsu Shimamura. Throughout most of high school and my childhood, I had always been mostly indifferent. In essence, I lived through a lot of my life with indifference, and I only recently overcame most of it. When I experienced and struggled through extreme indifference and cynicism, I found it very difficult to appreciate and express deep, specifically negative emotions. However, I've only briefly touched on one of the biggest consequences of that indifference that still affects me at present. I've spent a lot of time discussing life from Shimamura's perspective on the far end of the road, and what it was like for me to struggle through indifference. In doing so, I have failed to acknowledge the struggles involved with Adachi's position. So, let's talk about the other side. There's no anime that presents the two differing points of view better than Adachi to Shimamura. A character on the far side of the road is often complex and difficult to portray well, yet Shimamura is one of the most accurate portrayals of such a character in anime, second only to Yu and Toko from Bloom Into You. Furthermore, Adachi is a perfect representation of the other side. She presents the struggles one goes through to close the distance with someone who refuses to have more than superficial relationships with other people. You'll never know if you don't try. It's a saying we all hear, but do we actually live by it? Taking the initiative, especially in Adachi's scenario, would be near impossible. After all, before she met Shimamura, she had hardly interacted with anyone else, including her own mom. Even so, Adachi shows that just one step forward can go a long way. At the time of taking her first step towards a closer relationship with Shimamura, Adachi was unsure of how Shimamura would react. She overcame her hesitations primarily because she was selfish. She wanted both to be close with Shimamura and to be the only one by her side. It was greedy, but because of that greed, she was able to take the initiative. At times, Adachi found herself as possibly being overbearing, and became self-aware of her selfish actions, yet she continued to take steps forward. It's not just about the first step, it's also about taking the first leap. The first leap is often a leap of faith, as it was for Adachi. She took the first leap when she asked if she could sit between Shimamura's legs. It was a strange request to say the least, but Shimamura's apparent avoidance of love made her blind to Adachi's true intentions. It gave Adachi the confidence to continue down the road and realize her feelings for Shimamura. Because she took that first step and that first leap, Adachi was finally able to understand her love for Shimamura and what she really wanted out of the relationship. She also displayed the importance of being an opportunist. In repeated scenarios, Adachi found some opportunity to grow closer to Shimamura. If there wasn't an opportunity, her assertiveness allowed her to make one. In turn, she was able to obtain a lot of what she wanted, although there was still something missing. Adachi began to notice that, in order to be the closest one by Shimamura's side, she would have to be a catalyst for Shimamura to change her value in interpersonal connection. Shimamura did not recognize Adachi's actions as ones motivated by love, partly because she didn't value love, and partly because she was simply oblivious. Adachi began to understand the complex personality Shimamura had as she continued to make attempts to close the distance. She had to establish empathy with Shimamura so that she could make sure not to be too brash. To establish that empathy, she had to first pay mind to how Shimamura reacted to her actions and others. Adachi noticed that Shimamura seemed to act coldly and standoffish towards everyone, so she began to expect the lackluster and indifferent reactions. Adachi also had to observe the other relationships Shimamura had. She at first became envious of how Shimamura was able to smile and enjoy herself around others, but she soon realized that those other relationships were mostly superficial. Shimamura did not care enough to uphold relationships, nor deepen any bonds. Shimamura confirmed on Christmas that Adachi was, in fact, her closest friend. However, as Shimamura pointed out, Adachi's definition of being best friends differed from Shimamura's. Adachi no longer desired only to be closer to her friend. Through the empathy she established, she began to desire that Shimamura would open up to her and strive to deepen their relationship. That's not to say Adachi became suddenly selfless in her actions. She still repeatedly acted possessive and selfish towards Shimamura, though less so than before. After finding empathy, Adachi struggled to find a balance between assertiveness and respect for Shimamura's distance. She was very assertive towards Shimamura. She wanted to grow closer and closer to her, but she also did not wish to push her away in the process. After all, even someone as indifferent as Shimamura has a tolerance threshold. Adachi came very close to breaching that threshold and turning Shimamura away in episode 5. The way she asked Shimamura to spend time with her on Christmas was obvious enough for her motivations to shine through. Luckily, Shimamura wanted so badly to deny that Adachi had feelings for her, so she accepted Adachi's poor excuses at face value. Adachi especially struggled with finding the balance in episodes 10 and 11. Shimamura was pulled into a new group of superficial friends, and Adachi was too hesitant, so she missed an opportunity to not lose Shimamura. In episode 11, she decided to finally take action, as she realized she could no longer wait around. Shimamura may not have been the kind of person to take the initiative, but she still appreciated Adachi finally making an effort to stay close with her. Hitoma Iruma's work really shined through in Adachi's character. His execution of a character pursuing an unrequited or unnoticed love in both Bloom Into You regarding Sayaka and Adashima were flawless. Both portrayals of pursuing love may share some themes, but they also represent very different scenarios. It's not as if he wrote Sayaka's arc to copy Adachi's. Adachi's pursuit of love differed from Sayaka's in that she actually took strides to close the distance with someone who was unlikely to open up to her, whereas Sayaka respected the distance. Sayaka pursued love with different people and persevered in finding the one. Adachi pursued love with one person and persevered in getting closer to that person. Yet the primary theme of both Sayaka and Adachi was the same. No matter how many times you fail in pursuing love, always keep hope. Adachi continued to take steps closer and closer to Shimamura, even after repeated failures to make her recognize her affection. She summarized the importance of perseverance when she read a quote from a book in episode 11. Why did I keep running? Because I was scared. I spend every day afraid, thinking, what if my tomorrow becomes yesterday to the rest of the world, as I waste time hesitating? If I'm going to be left behind because of some great change I don't know about, I'd rather run to the front and choose a path where I can make the change myself. When all is said and done, the persistence will pay off. Eventually, Shimamura began to open up to Adachi and even other people. She slowly came to value human connection more and more because Adachi was there to push her to do so. Episode 9 may have seemed insignificant, but it was a huge turning point for Shimamura. She spent the day with Adachi, remembering the previous day and her awkward experience with Tadami. She related her past to Briars, claiming that it was painful to remember the incomplete person she was when she was originally friends with Tadami. She didn't want to maintain a relationship with Tadami because of that pain, and because of the uncomfortable tension between them. Even if that was the case, Shimamura showed an effort to amend her coldness by calling out to Tadami using her childhood nickname. In a way, she was calling out to her past, to her incomplete self, to declare that her current self was complete. When she spent time with Adachi, she acted more open to her and seemed to immerse herself in the present more so than she ever had before. She was even more accepting of Adachi's strange request for a hug at the end of the episode. In episode 10, she and Tadami bought matching straps. Tadami pointed out that Shimamura was not the kind of person to place sentimental value in such an item, to which Shimamura responded with a promise to keep hold of it. Tadami was right. Shimamura was not the kind of person to keep something for the sentiment attached to it like Adachi was, but she was beginning to become more welcoming towards sentiment in general because of Adachi's efforts to close the distance. A similar situation happened between Adachi and Shimamura in the final episode. Shimamura bought them matching hair clips. Although it was still something with a more practical application than the bag strap, Shimamura still attached some sentiment to it. It's the small changes, such as a value in sentiment, that really matter. It was clear to Adachi in the final episode that Shimamura was changing. It was a slow process, but it was very possible that one day, Shimamura would recognize, and maybe even reciprocate, Adachi's love. All of the steps to reach the other end of the road are necessary, yet none of them can occur without the first. The road of a relationship is a long one to take. It stretches on and on at times, especially in a situation like Adachi's. However, you'll never reach the end if you don't take the first stride.